Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Dorset Council Licensing Subcommittee on Wednesday, the 8th of November. What a lovely day out there. I am Councillor Les Fry, representing Dorchester West. I'll introduce my colleagues at the moment.
My name's Derek Beer, and I represent Shaftesbury.
I'm Andrew Starr, and I represent Upton and Litchett.
Thank you both. We will now elect a chair for the meeting. Do I have a proposal from one of the members of the subcommittee, please?
Right, thank you. Shall I do it again? Yeah. May I propose yourself, Councillor Les Fry? Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you both. I will now ask the council officer to introduce themselves, starting with Phil, please.
Good morning, I'm Phil Crowther. I'm the subcommittee's legal advisor.
Good morning, I'm Elaine Tibble, Senior Democratic Services Officer.
Lindsay Watson, also Senior Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Catherine Miller, Senior Licensing Officer and Report Author.
Thank you all. I'll now ask the parties and the representatives in attendance just to introduce themselves, please.
Hi, my name's Helen Moody. I'm from Seaside, who is applying for a licence currently.
Thank you, Catherine. Is there anybody else?
There are no other reps for Seaside, no.
Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Mike Dyer, and he's substituted by Councillor Derek Beer.
Thank you. Do any of the councillors have any declarations of interest, please?
No, Chairman.
No, Chairman.
And nothing for me either, thank you. Do we have any urgent business? Thank you. I'm now going to ask the report author to outline the details of the notice and the case, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This hearing is to consider a new premises licence for Seaside, 8 Pope Street, Brewery Square, Dorchester. The application is for live and recorded music indoors, Monday to Saturday, midday to 2300 hours, Sunday, midday to 2200 hours. Supply of alcohol on and off the premises from Monday to Saturday, midday to 2300 hours, and Sunday at 2200 hours. The application and the plans are all attached at Appendix 1. Although live and recorded music have been put on the application under the Live Music Act 2012, any premises with a licence that has consumption alcohol on the premises can have live and recorded music between 0800 and 2300 hours with an audience of up to 500 without it actually being physically on the licence. Dorset Police requested a condition to be added to the licence if it were to be granted, and that is the designated premises supervisor will ensure that each member of staff authorised to sell alcohol has received the adequate training on the Licence Act 2003 in respect of sales of those who appear to be underage or intoxicated. The applicant has agreed to this, and their response can be found at Appendix 2. Environmental Health didn't make a representation. However, under the Live Music Act, they can't add conditions, but they did write to the applicant offering guidance to ensure that their business meets the prevention of the public nuisance objective, and their environmental protections email can be found at Appendix 3. There were no other representations received from any of the responsible authorities. There were 4 relevant representations received from members of the public, and their comments can be found at Appendix 4. Initially, there were 7 representations received. However, following an email sent by licensing on behalf of the applicant, 2 of the parties withdrew, 2 wanted their representation to remain, and 2 did not respond. And the email from the applicant can be found at Appendix 5. The applicant also offered to carry out some sound testing in one of the other parties' homes, and consequently, as a result of this, the party withdrew their representation. So the options available to members are today is to grant the licence subject to such conditions as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the licence and objectives and the mandatory conditions, to exclude from the scope of a licence any licensable activities which the application relates, refuse to specify a person the licence as a designated premises supervisor, or reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Colleagues, any questions at the moment for Catherine?
No, excuse me. No, thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, Ms Moody, do you have any questions at this moment for Catherine?
I don't think so, just that it's been really helpful having Catherine taking us through the process, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you. No questions.
Thank you. Ms Moody, would you like to make your case, please, for your application?
Yes, so I am Helen. I set up Seaside fairly recently. The background to the business is that in early 2019, my partner and I started selling records out of a vinyl VW camper van at festivals just for fun, really. At the time, I was a social worker at the council and needed a bit of a distraction outside of that. So we started it off like that, eventually got a shop in Brewery Square, and in between sort of bouts of being closed, open again because of COVID, we've managed to keep the business going over very difficult times. We got a licence for Vinyl Van. I went through the licensing procedure for Vinyl Van over a year ago, got that without any problems, I think because people didn't necessarily notice the licence application going through at the time. So we've held a licence at Vinyl Van, which is adjacent to Seaside, for over a year with, as far as I'm aware, absolutely no problems. We've had no noise complaints in that time, apart from when we had our opening night of Seaside. So the concept behind the Seaside was very much about building on what we'd seen happen through the shop, which is that if you get people together in a place through the power of music, you can actually do really great things. And over the last 4 years, we've built up quite a loyal customer base and made friends out of people who come along and support our events. We've had live music, we've had a monthly Joy of Decks session, we've had various different music nights, all involving alcohol. But, you know, I hasten to say our shop is full of thousands of pounds worth of stock. So doing the nights, it's not the sort of event where people come along to get drunk. It's alcohol is a way for us to just supplement our income a little bit so that we can carry on doing these things for the community. When we sort of realised that we could sort of possibly set up Seaside on a bit of a wing and a prayer, as we do with the Vinyl Van, it was with a view to carrying this on. So the purpose is to, you know, have workshops there, sort of provide a space where young people can sell their homemade jewellery, their upcycled clothes. So it's very much about giving me a little bit of an outlet, which I can do alongside my own health conditions, which mean that I've not been able to be a sort of fully active member of the workforce with long COVID. The reason that we requested the licence, that I set out quite clearly in the licensing application, was so that alongside these sort of community activities and, you know, selling jewellery, upcycled clothes, I'm not going to get rich off of that. That's not the aim either. But so that we can pay our overheads, having an alcohol licence would help us to just keep our income at a point where we can carry on. So I think when the licence application went in, you know, it was quite clear in the licence application what our hopes were, what we were going to do. Quite quickly, I became aware that it had obviously caused alarm amongst some of our neighbours, which I totally understand. I think, you know, they'd sort of taken parts of it, seen the hours that we were asking for, but not necessarily looked at it alongside what I'd said in the application. And, you know, everything in the application is true. It's to hold occasional music events. We weren't planning on suddenly turning into a nightclub with alcohol being served every day of the week till 11 o'clock, and that was made quite clear in the application. But I think, you know, the whole process has been quite upsetting, really. I think from my point of view, once I became aware that it had sort of stirred up a little bit of concern amongst our neighbours, we very quickly looked at, right, okay, what do we need to do to address this? Because I think I thought I'd provided enough information for people to understand what we were doing, and certainly people that are customers or that stop by and say hello, you know, we weren't trying to hide anything. We were very open about what we were doing. But I think behind the scenes, people were getting themselves concerned about what was going to happen instead of sort of trusting what was written in the licence application. What we did as soon as we became aware that people were concerned, because actually the community in Brewery Square is really important to us. You know, I love the fact that we say hello to each other and that, you know, you get to know people. Suddenly I found myself being sort of blanked by people. And so we did our best to try and look at their concerns, understand them. We immediately invited people in for an evening to the shop, to the residents, to, you know, come and talk to us, because actually I'd much rather have a face-to-face chat about things rather than endless emails. And those people that came along that night, I think, left reassured and, you know, having seen us, realised that in our 50s, we're not trying to start a nightclub in Brewery Square. We just want to have that flexibility to be able to have different events on different days as and when the opportunities arise. We previously, when we've had complaints about sort of noise, we've worked with Brewery Square to organise sound checks. Those sound checks proved that there was no noise actually penetrating into the buildings directly above. This is just Vinyl Van. But the people that have been serial complainers about the noise once a month, they refused a sound check. So, you know, as far as I was aware, that was all over and done with. And there's been no complaints to the Brewery Square management since October last year. So as far as I was concerned, it felt like we'd sort of dealt with the issue and moved on. When we were sort of putting Seaside together with the support of Brewery Square management, we took special steps, as we did with Vinyl Van, to put in high quality soundproofing above the shop. But actually we also discovered that half of the building above us is actually gardens. I've never seen them, but on the maps, half of both of the units, Vinyl Van and Seaside, is actually covered by a garden. So there's a bit of residential property directly above us, but the rest of it is gardens. We've kept double doors at the front of the shop because that provides quite a good sound barrier to the outside. And then I sort of spent quite a bit of time replying to the people that had objected as well, to address their individual concerns. I think, you know, I totally understand it. If there's something new happening around where you live, then it's understandable that you're going to get worried and start thinking about every possible scenario that could come up. But I think hopefully through 2 days spent responding to the messages that, you know, it did put people's mind at rest, because we're clearly not in a position to be, you know, we run the shop between myself and my partner with the help of volunteers and people on work experience. So there's not any plan at all to do it every day of the week. It really is just, as we have been doing, once or twice a month, but with alcohol as a way to just increase our income. I think, you know, on the opening night of Seaside, we did make the residents aware that we were having an open night, and regretfully on that night, people were disturbed unbeknown to us, sort of at the back of the service corridor, which is at the back of both Vinyl Van and Seaside units. I didn't realise, but that backs right onto some people's bedrooms. And I believe one of the objections that's still standing is from one of those people. We did offer to do sound checks with that person, but they wouldn't tell us their address, so we couldn't proceed with that. But what we did do was do sound checks with somebody else who lives on that same row who'd also been disturbed. And they're the ones that have now withdrawn their complaint, because once we realised that they were there, it was simply a case of making sure the doors to that back corridor were kept closed. I think, you know, we'd opened the back doors to let a bit of air flow through. That had obviously then let noise penetrate out, and, you know, now we understand how the building is put together. Hopefully we've resolved that, but the landlord is very much on side. If it does look like there's further issues, which I'm hopeful that there won't be, then, you know, we can look at that. But I think, you know, it feels like from the initial sort of people getting concerned about what we were doing, we've managed to put people's concerns and fears to rest a little bit. You know, I'm very sorry that on the opening night people did get disturbed, and we really don't want to be doing that, because, you know, that's not fair on people, but also we don't want to be having to deal with the aftermath of it. We're busy people. So it's, you know, I think we've done our best to work alongside the people that have had issues. I think, you know, it's a tricky situation in Brewery Square, and I'm sure it does come up quite a bit, and I don't want to go on too much or cause any sort of, you know, issues. But I think just from a personal perspective, the impact on this whole process has been really stressful. And I think, I'm choosing my words carefully, you know, I totally understand that people can get upset and can start reading things into issues or starting to think hypothetically about what could happen. But I think the personal impact is that it's sort of, you know, the application, you know, some people that I spoke to hadn't even read the application. So they'd sort of put in an objection saying, I don't know what I'm objecting to. Had they read the licence application, it was quite clearly set out there. And I think, you know, there is a bit of an issue in Brewery Square where there's residents who feel that their voices should be heard over everybody else's. I think it's really important people do have a voice, but I think as businesses in Brewery Square as well, it's just, we're all part of that community, and I want to make that point that, you know, there's some amazing, lovely people, most of whom are customers and supportive of what we're doing, but there's a very small number of people who, as the lovely Dorset Echo picked out, are under the impression that they live in a quiet residential street, which my definition of a quiet residential street is not where we are in Brewery Square. So I'm not trying to stir up any issues, but I think I really have to be authentic to myself and say it's getting a little bit tough as businesses sometimes to deal with this constant toing and froing between certain residents who feel that their voice should be heard, which I totally agree with, but it's saying the same things over and over again, which actually, as businesses, we're the ones that are sort of taking the brunt of that. So I just really wanted to make that point. I think, you know, we've done our best to work alongside the residents, but there's also a point to which I was prepared to go in this case, which is that actually when I've had quite negative dealings with people, it then makes it slightly harder to want to work alongside them. So I think, you know, the people that have had genuine concerns, hopefully we've put those to rest. We don't want to be upsetting people. I don't want to be having conflict with people. That's not what we're about. We're very much a part of the community, and community is the businesses as well as the residents, and it would be nice if we can all work alongside each other, as I hope we've managed to do in the great scheme of things. Yeah, so that's probably it for me.
Thank you very much, Ms Moody. Did your partner want to join you, Daniel? I think your partner's to the road. I was just thinking of moral support at the front, that was all. Okay, thank you. Colleagues, questions?
Yes. Thank you, Helen. You outlined that very well, and I'm really pleased that you've had a dialogue with residents that goes an awful long way, so well done. There are a couple of little points which we just need to satisfy ourselves on, if that's okay with you. Some of the concerns. No, let's do the first one. Did I understand from reading through the bits and pieces that quite a lot of what you do is to help people with special needs and such like as well? Do you have an element of that in what you do?
Not so much people with special needs. I think, you know, what we provided with Vinyl Van and now Seaside is a space where anybody is welcome. So we provide work experience opportunities from, I suppose, schools where perhaps young people aren't necessarily cut out for traditional education establishments. So it doesn't feel like it's people with sort of special needs. It's just people who education hasn't quite fitted them in the mainstream. So we're able to work with young people or anybody really. I think because we run the place between the two of us, the two places, you know, we really value what people can bring to help us. And so through having people from work experience, we're linked in with Westfields Art College and an organisation called SWARAC. But also young people just come into the shop and go, hello, can I come and volunteer here? So, and young people through the Duke of Edinburgh scheme as well have come to volunteer. So yeah, we want to provide an inclusive space where, you know, everybody has their talents, whether it's educational, passing exams, or being able to sort through records and listen to them, you know, so yeah.
I think special needs was the wrong word. I meant to ask exactly what you've just answered, so that's a good thing. The other concern that I had, and so often it happens with places which provide the sort of thing you do, people do stand outside and smoke and make a noise and a bit of a talk, and that can be a real nuisance for residents. Do you have plans in place to deal with that? Because wherever you go now, you go to places, people are standing outside and smoking and whatever, and that can be a bit of a pain for people, can't it?
Certainly, and you know, I totally get that. I've been quite mindful of that when people are going outside to smoke or vape, we don't want them disturbing the neighbours. So we've got notices up in the doorway that say, please be mindful of the residents. I've been going out, well, on the opening night, I kept going outside myself, mainly to cool off because I'm a bit menopausal, but also just to kind of reinforce that message. I think, you know, I totally get that. We could ask people to go and do that down in the square, but then I'm mindful that if they're in the square, they're still going to be talking, and I think, you know, we can do our very best to try and control that, but also when people aren't on the premises, it could be people walking up to the train station, it could be anybody that's outside making a noise. It's that sort of place, isn't it? Brewery Square, there's people leaving restaurants, drinking establishments, you know, just people going up to catch the last train to Weymouth. So as far as we can, we really want to monitor that. You know, most of the people that come along to our evenings are people that we know, they're friends, they're respectful of the space that we've provided. So, you know, I can do my best there to make sure people aren't going outside smoking and making a lot of noise. Our events, the ones we've done, never run past 11 o'clock anyway. So, I know 11 o'clock is quite late for some people. Certainly for me it is. But, we will do our best, and we put up the signs, as I say, to remind people. But I'm also quite good at letting people know if they're being a little bit out of order. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, if I may, please. What experience have you got of running a licensed premises, and what training have you undertaken?
Well, I've worked in bars for years as a student, and later on, I did the course, the personal license course, last summer at Weymouth College, I think. Yeah. So that sort of takes you through the licensing objectives, the responsibilities of a licensee. I've been running the bar at Vinyl Van for over the last year, where there's been no issues. We have a Challenge 25 policy in place because we do get younger customers, people coming along to our open decks nights. But again, they're generally with a parent, so, but we always make sure that we ask anybody that looks under 25. We've never had a single bit of trouble. I think some of the complainants were talking about a need for security, but these are people that come to our shop as customers, as friends, as, families. So there's never been a single bit of trouble. And because, the licensed premises is our shop. So we've got thousands of pounds worth of records in there. We don't want people in there being drunk and disorderly, because if somebody spilt a drink in one of the crates, that's already thousands of pounds worth of stock ruined, and you don't want to be having those conversations with people where you go, hang on a minute, you've just ruined our stock. So, but we've never had an issue. As I say, the people that come along are local people, they're residents, they're mums and their teenage sons. It's not the sort of place that people come to get drunk, and we certainly don't want that, and we wouldn't encourage that, because, it's just, as I say, the alcohol element is really just to provide a bit of atmosphere, but also to provide a bit of income so that we can carry on doing all the other bits of what we're doing, and keep the roof over our heads, really, in what are very difficult trading times, and have been since we started, basically, but we're still here, so.
Thank you, very helpful. Can you describe and tell me about your opening night at Seaside, please? What happened, and how it was organised, what the event was all about, and what happened?
So it was a reggae night. We've got links with a big reggae label called Greensleeves, and we'd been planning it for a little while. We were hoping that we would get granted the licence and it would all be plain sailing, but because of the objections, we got a temporary event notice in place. And it went from 7:30 till 11, and I have to say, it didn't go a minute past 11 o'clock, because I stood at the DJ section myself and made sure it went off at 11 o'clock. We had people coming and going. People had a really lovely night. We had lots of lovely feedback from the people that had been there, saying this is just what Dorchester needs. It was a little bit louder, I have to say, than some of our other evenings. I think certainly the sort of tones and the beat from some of the reggae music can be a little bit more, and that's something I've taken away from that night as well, is that, being mindful of the sort of music that's played so that it's not causing an issue. With regard to the room did get a little bit warm. I mean, number of people wise, it was nowhere near, I'd say probably we had about 60-ish people over the whole sort of double space. Nobody got drunk, there were no issues. There were probably some people going outside smoking and vaping, but as I said earlier, I was one of them to make sure that they were sort of hopefully keeping the noise down a bit. Unfortunately, as I said, we weren't aware that the service corridor backs immediately onto people's mezzanine bedrooms. Now that we are, we can bear that in mind. But yeah, so that's really unfortunate. You know, we didn't realise that by opening those back doors, it was letting the noise go directly into people's bedrooms. But the people that did work alongside us to address that, we've seen the layout of their flats and how it fits in with the back of our shop. So that was really helpful to help us understand, okay, where has the disturbance come from? And as soon as we checked that once all the doors were closed, the people behind couldn't hear anything. So that for us was quite a good indication that hopefully that issue has been resolved just by keeping the 2 doors closed. Yeah, and that we were really upset that we'd sort of caused that distress to people. But I really have to reiterate that 11 o'clock it was over. So that, you know, when I then read that people were saying it had gone on a lot later, I know for a fact it finished at 11. So, and I was home back with my children by 11:30. So that was a bit disappointing to read that people were sort of saying that it had gone on into, I don't know, I can't remember. My brain is full of what other people have said about me. So yeah, but that was it. And, you know, the majority left there feeling happy and, you know, that something different was happening in Dorchester.
Thank you, Helen. That's very helpful. Should the licence be granted? You say that people may go outside to smoke and vape, and that could be disturbing for the residents above there with the smoke, the smell going up. How would you consider controlling that? How might you control that?
I'm not sure I necessarily can, but I think that where we are, there's a sort of overhang, so people can stand underneath that, which would stop the smoke going up. It's I don't know. I can't stop people smoking. I could send them further down the square, but then it's going to be disturbing somebody else. And the people directly above our apartments, our unit, I'm not sure, you know, do they have their windows open at night in winter? Do they, you know, I can't stop people smoking. So we've put the notices up to say, please try and be respectful. But yeah, I can't stop people smoking. I could send them elsewhere, but then that's just going to upset other people down the way who, you know, and the reality is Brewery Square is a thoroughfare for people. I can't necessarily be responsible for everybody that passes through the street. You know, I can do my best, but I can't stop people smoking, so I don't.
If I can just make a small point on that, I totally get the point that that Brewery Square is a community space, isn't it? People go out, they drink, they talk, they do whatever they do. But I do think, if my memory serves me correctly, you do have the law on your side, because technically people shouldn't be smoking on your doorstep. They should be 20 feet away. I know you wouldn't want to be that belligerent and get into a fight with them about you should be away, but if it really was a nuisance, people are not supposed to step outside that type of premises. They're supposed to move away at least 20 feet. So you've got that on your side if you need it. You know. Yeah.
But you may wish to consider, if granted, that you consider some signage there because you don't want people hanging around static, because if people are passing through, smoke dissipates. If they're stood static, it will just go up. But that's one for you. You said in your things the number in the building will be restricted to 60. Does that include yourselves and your staff and everybody? And if so, how will you count the numbers? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, with Seaside, we estimated the capacity at 60. With Vinyl Van, that's got a licence with an estimated capacity of 60. We've never had that many people at an event. If it was looking like we were going to be at capacity, I would stand and count the people and stop people coming in. But the number of people is never, it's 20 people, it's 30 people. That's the sort of numbers we're looking at. In terms of staff, it's myself and my partner. We don't have any staff. A young person sometimes helps us on the bar. That's happened once when we had the opening night, just to allow us to. So, sorry? No, of course not. It's 20. I'm a responsible licensee. No, he's, I just say young person because he's a lot younger than me. So, yeah, so we would, if it looked like there's more than 60 people about to turn up for an event, then we would make sure, and it might be we look at doing tickets in future. It's, we're an evolving business that, we sort of, I don't want to say make things up as we go along, but, we're responding to situations. We didn't understand when we set up Vinyl Van that there would be this element of community that would grow up around it. So what we're doing is responding to that and thinking, well, how do we extend this? And that's the concept behind Seaside, to extend that. So it's, numbers-wise, we've never had that issue yet. But when we do, if we do, then we can make sure that we address it and keep the numbers at the numbers that we've got the licence for.
Thank you. Catherine, is there a count on the numbers, any control on numbers of any premises at all? Do fire get involved in that?
Capacity is normally dealt with under the fire risk assessment, so it would actually be, but I mean, licensees can set their own limits if they wanted to, but the fire risk assessment you would have done would say what your capacity is.
Do we know if that's been done or would be done at all under the current?
Got a fire risk assessment, and that's available for the fire service to see. They've seen the licence application and have had no issues with it. So, as far as I was aware, we were within what we're allowed to do. So,
and thank you. That's helpful. Obviously, what I'm just concerned about, if granted, and you go towards your 60 in the summer, the numbers will go up, get in there, it'll get warm, you'll open the doors again. And potentially, the risk is having the similar problem that you had before.
In the summer, what we've done is we've got fans in response after the issue with the opening night. The Brewery Square management lent us an air conditioning unit so that when we had the next event, we could trial that as a way forward, because what's happened is the soundproofing that they've put into both roofs is also very good insulator. So inside the shop, it's always very toasty, which is great. But when people are sort of in there or having a bit of a dance, that can then get quite warm quite quickly. So in the summer, we've had times where we've maybe had one of the front doors open, but as I say, this double door system does stop a lot of the noise penetrating out. We've got really thick, big windows as well. So I think we've always tried to remain respectful of the residents, so that we're not causing a disturbance. But I think also balanced with that is, this is something that we've been doing once a month. So I don't want to be upsetting people once a month, but also as part of our business, we need that mutual kind of give and take so that we're allowed to carry on doing the small things that we need to do to keep our business afloat, but whilst also being mindful of the residents' needs.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Ms. Moody, a number of conditions have been granted. Phil, did you want to comment on the conditions at all, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, Catherine set out in her report at paragraph 2.5 a number of conditions that she would recommend were imposed, effectively taken from the application and translated into more enforceable wording. I think if through you, Chair, a couple of questions from the applicant just to see whether if you were to grant the licence and you were to think appropriate, whether you would want additional conditions, and just if you could just bear with me a minute. So I think there's reference in the application to off sales taking place on a few occasions. Just wondered if the applicant would be able to give any indication of how often that would be, and whether, were you to consider it appropriate, whether they would, an upper limit on those occasions would be appropriate. And then I think Ms. Moody referred to notices being, in response to, I think, Councillor Beer's question about notices being put up on to ask customers to be respectful to neighbours. And again, were you to grant the licence and thought it appropriate, whether the applicant be prepared to have a condition requiring those notices to be maintained. So I think those are the two additional points for clarification, Chair.
Thank you very much, Phil. So, Ms. Moody, did you understand the two particular points there? The upper number of off sales that would take place, and would you be prepared to have a slight rewording of the conditions if the licence was granting, and particularly to allow for the notices, the signs to be put up as certainly part of the conditions there?
The notices are already up in the lobby. I think they were included as part of the pack. It's on bright, luminous yellow papers.
I think it's more about having a condition of that in your licence, that they should remain up. Yeah.
Regarding the occasional off sales, as I put in the licence application, the one thing that came to mind, and this is literally what we were sort of thinking about, was when they have big events in the square, like the Christmas lights switch on. Last year we served some mull cider, but the people that came in, they weren't able, they had to stay in the venue, in our shop, rather than taking them off. So that was the only occasion that I was thinking of when off sales might be needed, if there was something going on in the summer, for example. So you can put conditions on. I would say, trust me, to you know, what I've said in the application is my truth. So we're not going to suddenly start doing things totally different to what we've said in the application. It really was just an afterthought that, oh, that would be handy if we could sell it off the premises on these very few occasions. I mean, I don't know what these occasions are. It's Christmas. It could be maybe if the summer concerts happen again. But again, it's you know, my responsibilities as a licensee is to make sure that anything I do is not going to have an impact on the wider community. So the idea of the off sales was just for those those occasions, you can by all means put a condition on that, a number, but I don't know what number to put on that because I don't know myself how many occasions that's going to happen. But it was just part of the, oh, whilst we're putting in the licence, maybe I'll add this bit in if that makes sense. So I'm not going to object to any conditions being put on, but it would feel like, you know, at this stage, I'm not sure what benefit that would bring, in that it's probably going to be 2 times a year. We're probably not even going to do mulled wine this year because of, you know, it's that sort of, so it was just an afterthought. I don't think it.
I do understand what you need, because you can see that Brewery Square is a social venue in itself, and that people can come and sit and enjoy the music and buy a drink and sit outside and consume it. Thank you. You've got questions? Go on.
There was just a little thought. If you were caught in that embarrassing, say I came to you and I wanted to catch the last train back to Paul or whatever, and I say, well, we're closing now, can I take a drink on the train? There's that sort of thing that might crop up as well, which could cause you an issue. I know what a troublemaker I can be when I go out and have a drink somewhere, but there was just a thought.
So far. But if we were closing up, then, you know, past our licensable hours, I wouldn't be serving anybody, whether they were in the shop or off sales. So it's, you know, there's plenty of other places people can go to get drinks to go on the train. It's, you know, the alcohol license for us is very much to support what we do within the premises. It's not to then start selling cans of lager to people passing by. That's not what we're aiming for. It's really just, yeah, people that are in the venue, but with these occasional times when there might be events on where we can be part of that as well, and, you know, provide people with drinks if they want it. But we're not an off license. There's a very good off license just up the way, and a wine shop, and you know, places people can buy things to take off the premises. That's not what we're aiming for here. So,
thank you. I'm just looking at your application and stuff in general around the licensing objectives there. One, just to pick you up on the public safety. If any issues arise, we will contact the police who are based very close to Brewery Square and the premises requesting a license. You can't rely on the police to turn up. You should manage and run your event that the police are not required. If you do need to you need to, if there's any thought of problems, you'd need to bring in private security in advance.
We've never had an issue in the last year. I don't foresee it being an issue in the coming times. If it is, then we would take the appropriate steps that anybody would take if they felt that there was an issue emerging. So, you know, that was something that I put in because it's sort of making sure that the people in our establishment and in our community are safe. So I would just take the normal steps that I would do. I don't think we need any private security for the events that we're holding and will be holding. If that changes in the future, of course, we'd look at it. But the evidence to date is that we haven't needed it. I don't foresee that that's going to be an issue in the future. But if there was, then I would take the appropriate steps, which is that if somebody was causing a disturbance, I would address it myself or take the appropriate steps.
Thank you. Have you got any questions?
The beauty of the law is that we can tailor the license to an individual such as yourself. But the only problem I can see is that a lot of what you said is trust me, I know what I'm doing, you know, I will set boundaries. But in the law, the license, obviously, as I'm sure you realise, will have to set parameters. You know, when you say this won't happen very often, we have to possibly say how often it can happen. But although, you know, you come across as someone who's very much in control of her situation, and you've got a very clear idea of what you want. It's just that the license, should we grant it, would have to ensure that that is what you get. That's the only remark I'd like to make on it. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Any further questions?
Just one thought. I do. Again, I don't live here, but I do get the impression, of course, that there are security people around Brewery Square all the time. If you've got an issue, haven't you, that will back you up in that way. I believe Brewery Square is quite well managed from a point of view of dealing with people and dealing with any unruly behaviour. I think you've got that in place if should you need it, perhaps.
Yes, there is. I was reluctant to mention that because somebody that objected sort of highlighted that we shouldn't be relying on Brewery Square security. But we pay for the Brewery Square security as part of our, the rates that we have to pay, the service charge. So if there was ever an issue, they would be the first port of call before the police. But as I say, because somebody had raised that as an objection, I was reluctant to go, well, we've got security on site. It's not our security, but we contribute to the overall Brewery Square security as part of our service charge. So they are at our disposal as the first port of call. So, yeah. Yeah. I had to call on them in the last in the last 4 years of running the shop. So.
Thank you, colleagues. Any further questions at this time?
No, thank you.
Catherine, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you, Chair.
Is there anything you think needs clarifying that you've heard this morning?
No, you might want to clarify with the security, that is Brewery Square's own security, so you wouldn't be able to, if you were minded to grant it, wanted to put something on, it'd have to be their own security staff, not that reliant on the premises.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Phil, have we covered all the points we need to cover at this time?
Can I just say that? From our perspective, to pay for security for our little shop would feel a little bit above and beyond. I don't believe that any other premises in Brewery Square have security staff. And I think as soon as you start putting security staff on places, that can sort of give the wrong impression. We're quite a small community-based shop. I would not really feel it was appropriate or proportionate to suddenly start having security staff on the door. It hasn't been needed up until now, and I don't foresee it being needed. If we suddenly get an influx of issues, then I would happily look into it, but I would rather that not be part of any sort of conditions of the licence, because it's not been needed up to now. There's no evidence it is needed. We're one small establishment in a lot of establishments in Brewery Square where there is drinking, there are licences, so that would feel a bit disproportionate to me to suddenly need security.
Thank you very much, Ms Moody. Right, I'm going to give you a last chance to sum up now. Give all parties an opportunity to sum up their case or respond to any points raised. Is there anything you'd like to add or say to what you've already said?
I don't think so, no. Thank you.
Catherine?
Through it again. Thank you.
The only thing I was going to say, there is always the review process. So if a licence is granted, anybody, responsible authority or members of the public can review a licence if it feels it's not upholding any of the 4 licensing objectives.
Thank you for clarifying that, Catherine. The system does work well. If there is any problems, the system licence can be reviewed, and it does work. I can speak to that. Has everybody had their final chance to have what they want to say? Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Phil, have we covered all the points you need?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. In which case, the public part of the meeting will now conclude. The subcommittee will consider its decision in private with the Democratic Services in attendance and the legal advisor who may be called upon to offer legal advice. The decision of the Licensing Committee shall be communicated to the parties and made available on the Council's website as soon as practicable and within the prescribed limit of 5 working days. There is a right of appeal. Any party who wishes to appeal the decision has 21 days from the date of receipt of this notice to submit an appeal to the Magistrates' Court. Thank you all for coming. I wish you a good day. Thank you very much. Right, we now commence with an application, a further application. Would you like to introduce yourself first, please, sir?
Right, big one. Good morning. My name is Mark Banham. I'm a director of Bryant Valley Wines Limited, Morrish and Banham Wine Merchants Limited, and the Electric Pub Company Limited. And I'm here with regard to the premises alcohol licence application for Bryant Valley Wines.
Thank you very much. Would you like the report author now to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. This hearing is to consider a new premises licence for Bryant Valley Wines, Lytton Cheney. The application is for the supply of alcohol on and off the premises Monday to Sunday from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. The application is at Appendix 1. There were no representations received from any of the responsible authorities. However, planning did state that planning permission may be required for the proposed wine tasting venue, and the applicant would need to seek advice from them. There was one relevant representation received from a member of the public on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance and crime and disorder, and their comments can be found at Appendix 2. The representation contains some matters which are not material considerations and under planning, but do not relate to the full licence and objectives. These would include any parts of the representations relating to highway parking matters, amenity or need for a similar premises in the area. The options available to members are to grant the licence subject to such conditions as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the licence objectives and the mandatory conditions, to exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, refuse to specify a person in the licence as a designated premises supervisor, or reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Colleagues, any questions at this time?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Banham, over to you.
Thank you. I've been a wine trade professional all my working life. 20 of those in Dorset here. I have a personal licence since 2005. I've worked in a number of different businesses alongside Catherine, successfully without problem for all of those years. Within our wider business, I've held a designated premises supervisor position as well. So I hope that I'm reasonably well versed in this field of business. Very fortunately, a month or so ago, we were fortunate to purchase the Bryant Valley vineyard, internationally renowned vineyard in Lytton Cheney, which was founded by a very famous local man, Stephen Spurrier. The vineyard has a great appeal and great following, both locally and internationally amongst people who know about wine and not. Our application, the previous premises licence referred to the private house of the previous owner, which is removed from the vineyard. The purchase that took place didn't include the private abode, and so to continue the tradition of tours and tastings, we applied for a premises application at a different location, but on the same vineyard, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, questions?
Would you mind if I just ask you to elaborate a little more? Can you hear me okay? Yeah. You've talked about tasting and visits and tourism. Just to put, so we can get a bigger picture, you wouldn't, or do you, extend to group parties for such, like going before a stag night or a hen night or anything like that, just so that we get the broader picture of what it's about, because people could misconstrue or just understand. Is it purely just tasting and visiting, or do you have, would you say you'd open up to the local Chamber of Commerce to come and have a visit and that sort of thing?
our model would follow the existing model and model of other vineyards within the area, such as 30 Estate and Bride Valley. The model is usually a tour of 15 people, which might start at 11 o'clock in the morning, a tour of the vineyard, which might take an hour or so, a half an hour period to taste the wines of the estate, of which there are 5. The ticket price probably wouldn't stretch to 5; it would probably be 3, and then 20 minutes, half an hour or so for the visitor to purchase the wine for consumption off of the premises. Hen do's and stag parties are not part of our plans for sure, and never have been in any of the businesses that I've been associated with. Excuse me. That would be the model, just purely tastings and tours, really. There is enough. One of the reasons to purchase the vineyard as well is we have 4 pubs, 2 bars, and a wine merchant business, two dedicated websites for sales. So that really is that's the bigger part of the picture. The tours really are for promotion and cellar door sales, whereby the margin of return is a lot higher. But we'd certainly be looking. That would be a part of the business, but only a smaller part. Our model is really sort of vertical integration. We're very fortunate that we have a very good cider supplier and ale supplier, all of which wines go into the pubs and the bars. So really the tours and tastings are to supplement an addition and a good promotional tool and a creation of social media, which is pretty important in our business these days.
Thank you very much. That's useful. Thank you.
I'm just going to comment on some of the points that the person emailing objecting to, because I think it's worthy. People will be watching this online. The issue, the fact that the property is an agricultural holding, has no planning consent, is not within our remit here this morning at all. The issue of access through the village is not within our remit at all. We are just simply here to look at the licensing issues there. Another issue that they do raise is a consultation. Tell us about, have you done consultation with the neighbours, or what's the situation with that, please?
So the consultation that we took place was not in a formal way. So I live in the village of Long Breedy, as I'm sure you know is an adjacent village. So talking to local friends, neighbours, users of our current business, we use that as a process of consultation. We did engage in an informal way, I guess, with the local parish council as well. So we had a meeting with the local parish council at the premises and talked through our plans there also. It was an oversight on our part not to include with our one neighbour on the side of the vineyard, but we did engage with others in again not a formal way, but in an informal way, with the other 3 houses which are adjacent to the vineyard. We did also consult with another local business holder, again in an informal way, whose building yard abuts the vineyard itself. So we did. It was not in a formal way, but there was a degree of consultation, but an oversight on our part with the neighbour who made the complaint, or not the complaint, the objection. Sorry, forgive me.
Thank you. So the parish council came in and have had a look around the barn and the premises. Did you invite them there?
That's right. So through my previous business endeavours, 4 of the 7, I think, parish councillors are known to me in a sort of a business and also social way. Where my part of the business, I'm a wine merchant by trade. my business is Morrish and Banham, which is on Brewery Square. So I was pleased that the just to hear the application of the previous applicant. So I've had just dealings with them over the years on a sort of a social basis as well as a professional basis. And over, I think it was a pint in the White Horse, to be honest, I suggested that they might want to come and have a walk round on a Sunday morning and have a chat. We jumped in the gator, the agricultural vehicle, and drove them around the vineyard and said, you know, this is where we'd like to host the tours, and these are the main parts of the vineyard. So we did engage with the parish council, and I think, you know, certainly from the reaction they gave to me, they were, you know, broadly supportive of the application, I believe.
Thank you much, Mr. Banner. Now, I'm just looking at the objection again, because it's good to air the concerns raised. Some of the comments here are interesting. Do you see to any disruption, noise, or antisocial behaviour? Do you envisage that as being a byproduct of your actions?
I don't, if I'm completely honest. The vineyard is a very tranquil place. Wine tasting and wine appreciation is a relatively, certainly in that context, is a relatively refined and genteel sort of process. I think that the type of people who would be drawn to Bride Valley, given its reputation and the quality of its wines, will be there to taste and assess the wines in a quite a sort of cerebral sort of way. I can't see any potential for disruption myself.
That's right. The objector has also raised, given the context above, to seek 7 days a week, hours running to 10 o'clock in the evening seems wholly inappropriate. Would you like just to comment?
Again, with our wider business, we tend to, and certainly with my wine merchant business in Brewery Square, we apply for those working hours. Highly unlikely that we would use any of those. As my career has progressed, and even in the start of it, the idea of working late nights and Sundays, we don't work Sundays and Mondays in any of our associated wider businesses. In my business in Brewery Square, we do have tastings, but they run from 6 till 8 p.m. We have our annual tasting, which is next week. That will run and might run till 9:30. So we've just got a little bit of give should we do any tastings. But it was really the application was to be in line with the other parts of the business rather than a specific application.
Will you be offering food at all? Any offerings of food at all?
Potentially in the future, but this would be charcuterie and cheese. In the wider business, we have current suppliers, all of which are locally based. So Capriolas, who come from Rampisham, and Mercantile Italiano, whose products are not local; they're Italian, but they're based in Bridport. It is the more and more in various. I know that Langham, for example, have decided to serve a little bit of food from time to time, but Furley Estate don't at all. They're very much like we hope to be, the purest wine sort of purest wine experience. We might occasionally offer a little bit of sort of English tapas, as it were, but that's not our main intention for sure.
Some of the offers of conditions are a little bit light, they appear to me. I don't know whether you wish to comment on those. A CCTV system will be installed. It doesn't tell us about anything about the recording or accessibility of that. All empty glasses and bottles will be removed as soon as possible. Will there be an impact on your neighbours by the removal and throwing out of bottles, for example, them clinking into the recycling, for example?
No, I don't believe so. So the where that the location of the barn, which will be the sort of tasting room, is on the farm, so it's a good distance from any residential home. And one of the things that, as a company, we hate probably above all else is if you're sitting in a dining room in a pub and somebody tosses a bottle into a glass collection area and it reverberates through the whole pub. It's one of our absolute no-nos in our business. So that would be one of the things. I will be based there certainly 4 days a week. My other director, Caroline, will be there when I'm not. But we're quite lucky insofar that we have the infrastructure in place. We have the chain of command throughout the other pubs. There is an area manager. We also have a pub manager, a deputy manager. So and everyone knows the processes in the pubs. One of which is the careful disposal of glass and in that environment. Most of our pubs are in a village location, so we're very used to working with and alongside the local community. Something that we do very well at the Pie Moor Inn in Bridport, the Elm Tree at Langton Herring, the Antelope at Hazelby Bryan. The World's End is out on its own a little bit, but we're soon to be taking on the Fox at Anstey, all of which are in village locations. So one of our things that we need to do is get on with our neighbours. So again, that will be something that we are very keen to do. One of the things I should have perhaps mentioned earlier is that one of our great aims is for the village to be proud of us, because there's a great responsibility, I think, not only from, excuse me, the previous owner, who is a fabled wine guy, but also the village itself. We definitely want to be seen as good neighbours and good people.
Soon, cheese and wine in Lytton Cheney. I know the village well. You've got about the proof of age scheme. Is that a proof, challenge 18, challenge 25? And the point that some of the conditions that you're potentially offering are a little bit short on detail. I accept, and I think my colleagues accept, that you've got a lot of experience in the licence trade, as is your colleague. But what we don't know is what training and development your staff might have to follow the rules and regulations and any conditions should this licence be granted, if you see where I'm going on that.
So we would, of course, as in all the pubs, give thorough training to any individual who works with us. In terms of the Challenge 25 and Challenge 18, that's something that we would always do. My experience in the wine trade, so certainly the more purist wine side of the business, is that those sort of people don't come along, that they are generally, or consistently mostly over 30 for us. So that's probably why my side of the business is more wine merchant and now vineyard rather than pub. But even today we have our operations manager is training our wine staff in Bridport, our shop in Bridport, about not only it's mainly to do today with food service and the compliance there, but she will again emphasise the over 18, over 25, and basically being the good practice in our licensed workplace.
Colleagues, have you got? Go on.
I take it that really all this boils down to is you'd be taking people on their tour of the vineyard and then inviting them to sample your wares at the end and hopefully purchase some. Is that correct? So you'd only envisage, should you get the license, envisage these people being served, not people coming in off the street, as it were.
Yes, definitely. The model of the business is tours and tastings. Yeah, we're certainly, we have pubs elsewhere. Brye Valley is not the place for a pub. It's something, we want to produce really first class wine and have it appreciated by by interested wine aficionados, and hopefully, as you say, purchase lots to take away, but not to drink on site. Yeah.
And can also, when you were asked about the hours earlier, you seemed to be saying that you won't be staying open that late. So would you object to the hours being curtailed at all?
No, I don't think so. The upper limit of 10 p.m. was purely for just the occasional use. I presume that we can, if we needed to have an occasional extension, that could be applied for, but I don't foresee that we would need it.
I was just thinking that may put your neighbours' minds at rest a bit, that's all. But you could, as you say, you could have a temporary event notice if there's some particular function. Thank you.
Catherine, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you, Chair.
Colleagues, any further questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Just going to give you, Mr. Banham, do you want to sum up and just tell us, sum up what you've said already so far?
Yes, so thank you for your time this morning. Our intention is to build on the great work of Stephen and Bella Sparrier, who created the Bride Valley Vineyard, to produce the best wine we can. We've just within a month of purchasing the property, we were straight into harvest, which proved to be very interesting, challenging in some ways, but ultimately successful. We want to make the best wine that we can. We want to make the village of Littoncini proud of us, the Bride Valley, the wider Bride Valley proud of us. We want to offer a little bit of employment to those local people who feel that, certainly my own son, whose life will be in agriculture, and we want to really respect the memory of Stephen Spurrier and be good custodians of what was Cross Tree Farm, which is now Bride Valley Vineyard.
Thank you very much. Catherine, do you want to say anything else?
No, only the fact, as I said previously, that a licence can be called into review if it is granted, if any of the responsible authorities or members of the public feel it's not upholding any of its licence objectives, and this will be heard again in a 3-member licensing subcommittee hearing where decisions will be made.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to say anything else before we close? No. Phil, have we covered everything we need in this one?
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points, if it's all right, a couple to build on the questions that members asked about conditions, and then firstly just to say that there is a duty on the council to have regard to the statutory A and B parameters when making your decision. It's a duty to have regard, not any higher than that, but just to be clear. And then on conditions, so again, just in the context that this is only if the committee was minded to grant the application. Mr. Banham, I think you said that you would have staff training. If the members wanted, felt a condition was appropriate, would you be happy to accept a condition requiring staff training and records to be kept? The only other question I think I had in relation to conditions was there's reference in the operating schedule in the application to noise and litter will be kept to a minimum. I was just wondering whether, Mr. Banham, whether you could elaborate on what steps you would take to ensure that was addressed.
Yes. So in terms of noise, again, the customer would arrive either by car or by bike or by foot. The tours would be 11 a.m. to 1 o'clock, and they would leave, sort of 1 o'clock, 1:30, in the way that they came. I think that the noise wouldn't be particularly a problem. In terms of any littering, we have a team of 13, 14 constant vineyard operatives, and myself and other members who would if there were any litter as they came and went, we would deal with that in-house ourselves, and this would be taken away by a registered and qualified collector. Again, I think we're very keen on the to promote the beauty of Bride Valley and the there's a footpath that runs straight through it. You can have a look yourself, or even better, come on a tour. We're very keen to keep it as pristine and as beautiful as possible. It's a lovely place. It will be my main place of work. So I'm very keen that like a lot of these hopefully great wine estates, not only in this country but around the world, that everything is as it should be, and that's one of my main ambitions. I'm very much a belt and braces. I like things done properly, and my day-to-day working place will be there, and I will ensure that it's as beautiful tomorrow as it is today, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Phil. Has that covered all your points, your concerns?
Thank you, Chair. Providing that gives you enough information to reach your decision, then yes. Thank you.
Thank you. For all those present, we will now retire shortly and consider this application. Should the licence we choose to grant the licence, then there is always the review process. So if there is noise or antisocial behaviour or anything like that, then any objectors can submit a request for the licence to be reviewed, which it will be done within a reasonable period of time, which is about 28 days. So thank you for your time. I think we've covered everything now, Phil, haven't we? In which case, the public part of the meeting will now conclude. The subcommittee will consider its decision in private with the Democratic Services in attendance and the legal advisor who may be called upon to offer legal guidance. The decision of the licensing subcommittee shall be communicated to the parties and made available on the Council's website as soon as practicable and within the prescribed 5 working days limit. There is a right of appeal. Any party who wishes to appeal the decision has 21 days from the date of receipt of this notice to submit an appeal to the Magistrates' Courts. Thank you all. Have a very good day.